Item 20, development and architectural and site approval permits that would allow the replacement of 9 one-story public storage facility buildings with 2 four-story buildings with basements, fence exception that would allow electronic vehicular gates, a tree removable permit that would allow the removal and replacement of 17 protected trees. This went to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission recommends the City Council conduct the public hearing, find the project exempt from CEQA, and adopt the resolutions 1907-1 and 072 and 073 and 074. Staff report.
So, yeah, by my watch. This will be June 19th. But so I'll be presenting on the public storage project. So the project is currently has a existing public storage facility on site. To the north of the project is Interstate I-280. To the east, you have some residential condos. South, office use, and to the west, residential apartments. So the proposal would involve the demolition of the existing approximately 54,000 square foot public storage facility that covers approximately 9 buildings and roughly 585 storage unit, and it will involve the replacement of a new storage facility consisting of 2 four-story buildings with basements measuring approximately 264,000 square feet with approximately 2,400 units. There is an electronic vehicle access and a tree removal permit to allow for the removal and replacement of 17 protected trees. The project is almost 3 acres big. Again, the existing floor area is 54,000 square feet, and the proposed is 263,671. There are 32 parking stalls proposed, and that was part of a parking analysis that we prepared. The hours of operation are generally staying the same. They currently operate from 9:30 to 6 Monday through Friday, but they'll be increasing their hours from 9 to 6, so a half an hour increase. Saturday will be from 9 a.m., or Saturday and Sunday would be from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Gate access will remain the same, or will remain the same in the morning, begin at 6 a.m. And extend to 10 p.m. So this is the site plan for the proposed project. The floor area is spread among 2 buildings. So you have Building 1 and Building 2. Building 1 will measure approximately 129,856 square feet, and Building 2, 133,815 square feet. The project would involve the replacement of the existing manager's apartment and office sales areas. So the manager's apartment is in the back here, and the sales office area is up front. There's a new construction of a trash enclosure to the rear of the property back here, and a replacement of an electronic vehicle gate that is approximately in this area. There'll be updated landscaping throughout the project site along the perimeter. A nice landscape feature along the frontage next to the condominiums will be part of the project. Setbacks from the front will be over 150 feet from this area. For the side setbacks along I-280, you'll be about 40 feet to this side, 10 feet here, and about close to 90 or so feet from the rear. So one of the big things that we really worked with the applicant is really to maximize the setbacks from the residential uses. So right now, to the condos, there's a 50-foot setback. To the building now, it's going to be 150. To the apartments, it was a 19-foot setback, and now we're over 80 some feet. Another big thing that we work closely with the applicant is the architectural design. This is probably one of the nicest looking public storage buildings you'll ever see. The building facade, the materials have all been worked with the applicant and the city's consulting architect to really bring high quality design to the project and make it look more of a office building type feel as opposed to a storage building. The building height ranges from approximately 41 feet 2 inches to 44.5, depending on the adjacent grade. Again, the building materials are very high quality, CMU, aluminum windows, different just materials being incorporated. To help with the architectural details of massing the building, we've incorporated significant glazing throughout the project, breaking the massing of this elevation by changing materials. So there's the details that are called out in these elevations are really calling out different materials, and all this is to help minimize the massing of the structure and really bring out essentially make the building feel smaller, look smaller through these different materials. So you have split face CMU, you have metal cornices, and all these different materials really to bring that into fold. Along the rear, that material changes, but we've also incorporated a lot of landscaping. So this is that southern elevation facing that existing office building. So we worked with the applicant and the city's consulting architect to really bring in plantings that kind of help break down that massing again. You'll see here too the spandrel glass that's going from the bottom to the top again to make that feel smaller, break the massing of the structure. Landscaping, one of the big things for this project, as alluded to in the slide before, is landscaping. Landscaping really helps to soften the building quite a bit, in particular along the edges of the property here, and of course here. One of the big things too is along the condos. Right now the condos really just look at just a storage building. It's up front, right up front, but now there's a big landscape area here that's part of a bioretention basin for the project, but it really helps to break that massing, make it feel more pedestrian friendly to the project. The project does require the removal of 17 protected trees kind of spread out throughout the site. They are replacing the trees with 38 trees, where typically 20 would be required. The site's going to have over 16,000 square feet of open space, or not open space, but landscaping area. Again, the fence exception is essentially required for any time we have an electronic vehicle gate. And it's really to ensure that the access is being maintained and that fire can require certain things like a knock box, essentially making sure they can get to the site in case of an emergency. So that's really what the fence exception is coming from. The vehicle gate is located about here, and it's more than 180 feet from the property line. So this is about 180 feet. And then the roadway, Valley Green, is about 500 feet from there. So it's really tucked away, hidden away from the public, so it's not intrusive. We worked with the applicant with that as well. Outreach, the applicant is here. And I think he'll go into the outreach a lot more, but he did neighborhood meeting, he did mailers, he spoke with neighbors and all that, and so I think that's something he'll touch on. We did the typical city outreach, site signage, legal ad, and notices mailed to the property owners within 300 feet of the project, as well as posting on the city's website and the official bulletin board. So we did find this project categorically exempt as an infill development. We had LSA, who's here as well, to answer any environmental questions and prepare the infill development memo to analyze the impacts. The project's also consistent with the general plan and zoning, so that's another plus for the project. So we did receive public comments regarding construction, parking, environmental, fire safety. Excuse me. And so construction concerns, we typically deal with the standard conditions of approval that include pre-construction meetings and construction management, that include dust control, noise limitation. We'll also have, demolition debris was a concern that was brought up, but that's also something that's taken care of through the building permit process and working with the Bay Area Quality Management District. Parking, as I mentioned, was done through a parking study prepared by Hexagon Transportation Engineers, and they came back and we worked with them to get that number where 20 parking spaces or so would be really required. 23 parking spaces would be required. This project's provided somewhere about 32. Environmental, as I mentioned before, this is an infill project, so it's exempt from CEQA. We did do a very thorough environmental analysis to confirm that. There's an attachment in the report, and it's thick if you if you read through it. Fire safety, The staff and has worked with fire, and the applicant has worked with fire very closely to make sure all the fire concerns, access, the building itself being up to code in all those aspects. Planning Commission did bring up certain topics. I did touch on them, so I didn't want to get too much detail with them, but these are some of the items they brought up: landscaping, fencing, manager's unit. These are the typical stuff that we discussed with them at the Planning Commission hearing. So, in conclusion, Planning Commission did recommend that the City Council find the project exempt from CEQA, approve the development permit, the architectural site approval, the fence exception, and the tree removal permit. That's it for me. We do have, as I mentioned, the applicant is here to answer any questions, and we do have the city's environmental consultant as well.
Okay, first we have 3 public speakers. The first one is Sekar Varanasi, if I pronounced that right. I'm sure I didn't. Harish and Jennifer Griffin. So welcome, Sekar. Who did?
His dad. He's my dad.
Oh, do you want to speak instead?
Second one on the list.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much for taking the time to bringing this issue and listening to my point of view on this. I wanted to share a couple of concerns. I am one of the owners in the condo complex directly across from the proposed site. So at a high level, I want to talk about 2 aspects. One is the safety, and the other is an inconvenience, and there are a couple of points below each. I appreciate the summary, and this is actually the first time I saw more information about this project. I appreciate the team trying to do the outreach. I unfortunately was not one of the people who knew about the details, and I was not one of the 4 members of the community that they consulted. As I said, my place is directly across. I actually am one of the units seeing the storage facility. The Planning Commission kindly addressed this, and they said that they tried to take the consideration of the aesthetics and so on. I actually beg to differ. So let me actually go through, I read through the big fat folder, and I just picked a few points. As I said, I'm just seeing this for the first time, so I'm going to walk through some of my concerns. First, on the safety front, is there were some burglaries that occurred in the unit in the last couple of months. I believe 3 units within the condo complex were, I don't know if burglary is the right, but stuff got stolen, right? And my concern is this facility will essentially cause more vehicles moving boxes and so on. And so for a potential, and I'm not saying that the people coming in, their customers, are the thieves. I'm just saying that would just make it a lot easier for somebody who wants to burglarize to kind of blend in, because there's yet another truck moving out with boxes. So given the recent past trend, that does cause me some concern. Now, I want to say that I work with numbers, and I'm going to share some numbers. I'm going to first start with, I realize correlation is not causation. Can I, if I put something here, just, okay. That is crime reports. In the last, I believe, 3 months, that says 5 and 5 over there in that area, which is around the proposed site. Now, as I said, correlation is not causation. Those numbers are correlated with my house being there too. I'm not saying I'm causing the theft, nor am I saying that the storage is causing the theft. But I just want you to be aware that this has happened, and for the reasons I mentioned, I'm concerned. Second, this is a huge facility. Just to give you a point of reference.
Oh, okay, finish up soon, because you're...
Pardon?
Try to finish up, because you're over time already.
Okay. The Apple Infinite Loop is 850,000 square feet. This is 250. This is huge. This is like a third of Apple's Infinite Loop campus. This little road that leads into this facility is not even a road. It doesn't have a name because it's an alleyway. The number of cars that are going to go through this is, I believe I saw the traffic report, is in the range of 500 or so. I worry for my kids as they're walking, and one of my parking spots is actually outside. I worry for my kids as they walk from outside the unit into the car because sometimes cars are just zooming by. And this is a dead end. The only other facility that's there is the public storage. And that's a 5 times increase in the size of the storage. My concern is, and the traffic is expected to increase by about the same ratio, maybe 4 to 5 times. And I'm concerned about the traffic situation on this little alleyway. Parking. There are a lot of concerns on this front. I've had multiple instances, again, not saying that these are public storage customers, but I've had to call the tow truck 3 times in the last year, and 1 time actually got towed. The other 2 times I could resolve the issue before the tow truck got there. Now, I'll give you some examples I have some concerns about the parking study. I'm going to just narrate a quick narrative to...
Please finish quickly.
If an archer shoots 3 arrows and wildly misses the target, and the average is on target, that doesn't mean that the archer did a great job. The parking study looked at 3 facilities and took the average and came up with a recommendation and put a buffer. However, one of the 3 facilities had the parking utilization 40% more than the average that they took as their recommendation. So in fact, what they claim as a buffer is really not a buffer. And the number of parking spots, at least according to the document sitting outside, they're increasing the number of parking spaces by 0%, but they're increasing the storage capacity by 5 times. It just seems like something's amiss, and every time something goes wrong with the parking, I'm likely to suffer having to call a tow truck and wait for that to happen. That aside, the aesthetics, I'm going to be, right now, I look out the window, and yes, I see the public storage, but I also see beautiful mountains and trees in the distance. Now I'm going to wake up to a brick wall. Just imagine if that's the scene you want to wake up to when you look out the window. Thank you.
Great. Jennifer Griffin.
Excuse me, sir, can I ask a question?
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
So is your condo to the west of this facility, or to the east, or?
The condo unit is to the east of public storage.
Okay, so the alleyway,
Is between my condo complex and the public storage facility. And
I
that's
see.
the only entrance to the facility.
and is your access, the access to your complex via car the same alleyway?
Correct.
Okay, great. I have some more questions later, but I'll
Okay, thank
address
you.
them to staff. Thank you.
Okay, Jennifer.
Good evening, City Council. I was at the Planning Commission when this went through, and it is, I would say, because that area is generally low-rise, I mean, it's 1 to 2 stories, having a 4-story building of this massing going in there is a bit different. I would be concerned if I lived next to it, but then again, it is a storage facility. I was a bit mortified to see that on the, we still can't see over there, but that doesn't matter. The southern side, which was, I believe, an office building, this 4-story building is built like, I don't know, was it 5 or 10 feet from the property line? I don't know why they're doing that. I think they said that they had clear fire access from what I remembered from the Planning Commission. But if I was the adjacent, I believe that that's a retail building or commercial building and that there's a parking lot on the southern side, I would be a little bit concerned if I was going to redevelop my property, especially if we were going to put housing in there. You've got a 4-story vertical run 10 feet or 5 feet from a property line. And I don't, if the way we're going with housing now, that whole area back there, the southern side, could become housing. So what are you going to do? You're going to have condominiums 10 feet from the property line staring into a 4-story building. Now, the articulation on the southern side was very well thought of. It's very nice, but it is so vertical and so massive. I think it might be better to move this tall building, like 15 feet or 20 feet. Why does it have to be crammed up against the southern area? If I was the property owner to the south, I would be upset because my potential for redeveloping my property would be compromised because I have a 4-story monolith 10 feet from the property line. But I understand that there's some issues because you've got the Juniper-Sarah Creek Trail up to the north, you've got landscaping, etc. But it does, to me, it's like there's no point cramming the building up to one side of the property, especially when I believe it's 200 feet long. Is that correct? Nobody said what the dimensions were along the southern border. That's a pretty big building, might be 300 feet. I just think that we could do better by not smashing it up against the side of the building. Anyway, but I do appreciate the articulation, and I'm sure that it's one of the nicest public storage buildings in the whole state. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's no more speaker cards, so you can bring it back to council. I can go first. I had a bunch of questions. So it's increasing the number of units from, what is it there? I can't see it. From, where did that go now? To 585 from, what was it before?
Somewhere around 2,400, give or take 100, but the applicant can get into more detail with that.
So why is there no more parking, and why is there no traffic impact that would subject it to CEQA?
So we did, it's really, there's really no traffic impact because of the ebbs and flows. It's a storage unit, so it's not someone's going there all the time. So we did do, as part of the environmental analysis, a trip generation analysis as well. And what we came with, I'm just going to pull up the number, is that there's a PM peak level trips that would be generated by the project are 45. We do have the consultant here to kind of go into that a little bit more.
Matthew as well, LSA. Yeah, but then so like Eric said, 45 new trips would be generated in the PM peak hour, but then accounting for the existing trips on the site, discounting those, it would be 36 net new trips. The VTA, their congestion management plan, calls for a full TIA with 100 trips during any peak hour, so this project didn't meet any of those.
And the lack of increase in parking is because?
So parking is not a CEQA issue.
Oh, no. I'm related to CEQA.
That's a me question. So,
Right, okay.
So we did do a parking study, and we looked at 3 different sites that were comparable in kind of the multi-level and size. And so the parking that was indicated as required from the parking analysis is actually lower. It's around 23 stalls. So the applicant is exceeding that requirement, going to 32. Right now, and I may have the applicant get into this, they're drive-up units. There's really no parking on site. So this is actually giving a lot more parking and access to the site than that currently is there.
Okay. And do we know when those condos were built and when the public storage was built?
Oh, the public storage was built, I think, in the 70s or so. And then the condos, I think, early thousands.
And was that zoned for housing originally, or was it rezoned for that?
I don't
that
recall
building?
specifically off the top of my head, but I can find out.
I mean, I always thought it was an odd place for those condos, right up against the off-ramp there.
Yeah, I get that.
So there's no change in zoning required. The height is already.
Yeah, everything, they came in meeting all our requirements. We worked very hard with them on that.
Okay, and I was a little confused, the gate hours.
Mm-hmm.
Why does it close, why does it need to be open till 10 p.m. on Well, every day when it used to be open till 9.
I would let the applicant speak to that.
Okay.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Council members, or morning. The hours of operations, there's two different ones. One is when the office is open for leasing purposes, and the other hours is because the majority of our customers come before or after work, so it's a convenience to the customer and the residents. And that's why the hours are different. And that's what we currently have today, and what we're proposing. One thing that this property does provide is a much more secure and quiet facility because all the units are looking inwards. So when you open the unit, really you don't hear anything opening or closing. And also the cars are parked like under the first floor, so they also create less noise for the neighbors and surrounding area.
Well, actually, I think I misread this chart. So you're not asking for expansion till 10 p.m. for the hours, are you?
No,
Okay,
I think
okay.
we're no.
Yeah, that was not. The other things were centered when they were common. This was not. Okay. Okay, that's all the questions I have. John?
Joe, technical question first. So it says existing 54,000, proposed 263,000. Does that include the basement level?
I believe it does, yeah. Yes.
So on the one hand, there was outreach done. I really think planning needs to raise the bar for resident engagement. I mean, I think this process has been a 2-year process or longer. So it's not like there was any shortage of time. And in this case, for the apartments, the condo, separate the apartments, had a meeting or proposed, February 26th, sent out notices for the meeting to be held on March 5th. And going forward, I just don't see that that's sufficient notification. Our residents need to be treated much better than that. And so I hope the takeaway for planning is to really elevate the resident engagement. I would toss out something, like for a 6-month period from the beginning of notifying residential people that are close to a development, that at least about 6 months that they can somehow work it into their schedule, make it to one of like 3 different meetings, put in their input, and be able to get some type of response, kind of like we heard concerns tonight. Had that input been received, they might have been able to do something to help the condo resident in his. And when there's such short notification period, and in his case, kind of finding out about it, yesterday or today, I mean, there was plenty of time for that, and I think we really need to be looking to make sure our residents are, better accounted for resident engagement on stuff. So I really do appreciate, the significance that he's going to be subjected to. I don't know that the end result would have been changed, but at least he could have felt a lot more part of the process. So I hope we learn from that. I really hope we learn from that, and also the distance of notification, where in the presentation it said 300 feet. I really think it needs to be, to a level of the affected people, not an out-of-date number when developments were a lot less dense. I mean, if we were to truly be able to look, back in the calendar, when was that 300-foot or the 500-foot devised? Was it 1940, 1950? And here we are putting very dense developments. Well, things are growing and they do need to be bigger, and I think we need to adjust accordingly to make sure that we really do capture what we should be for the residents. Okay, that being said, the positives of this, the color, I think, speaks fairly well. I mean, I think you did a good job of kind of describing how, it's meant to appear to not be quite so big and bulky. The nice row of trees along the side, the 150-foot setback, I think really does help, and it actually helps on the condo side, 150 feet. Still, 4-story, could the upper story have been set back another 10 or 15 feet? They would have lost a couple storage units, but it's going from essentially 500 units now to 2,200. So what if it went to 2,198? I mean, taking into account how it would affect some people, that might have been something that the nearby resident would have said, you know what, yeah, hey, thank you for that extra effort, as opposed to trying to get every square inch, even though it's impacting, nearby people. So I do like that the owner has put the 12-foot easement for the bike and ped. I think that's a really good feature for it. So I don't think any project is going to be totally perfect. I think there's pros and cons. So I'll leave it at that.
I don't have comments or questions.
So, I have to say, thank you for a pretty thoughtful design, because the setback from the condo on 150 feet, that's really good. Thank you for working with the developer, and thank you for working with the staff. And then the building, it does look not like a public storage building, like a regular office building, and has a varied design. And that's great. And I did hear a comment. So I received an email. A resident is concerned about the air, the pollution and the noise for the one unit that's on site. And so she's requesting for triple pane window and air filter for that unit. So have we included that?
So I think the comment regarding the noise, that's something that's already taken care of in the building code. There's a certain noise decibel that they're required to have. I think it's 45, and I think the project's required to meet that. The air filtration as well is something that's also covered in the building code. But if there's specifics, we kind of drafted some language to add a condition if warranted. We did speak with the applicant about those triple pane windows, and essentially insulating the building a bit more and adding that air filtration system. And he seems agreeable to it, to kind of go above and beyond what would typically be required.
So our building code currently doesn't require those when it's close to highway.
No, they require them at all time. There's different levels. So the noise level for residential units, there's a certain threshold that they're supposed to meet. Mm-hmm. And then same thing for air filtration. There's a air filter number that essentially they meet. It's the acronym's MERV. I don't remember what it stands for. But there's a value that's given. I think it starts at a minimum of 6, but the higher that number goes, it actually lends itself to Cal Green and meeting LEED certification as well. So it's something that kind of can be implemented.
Okay. So I think the parking study, I did wonder about how accurate that is, but the result is 23 space, and then the developer is providing 32 spaces. And as I understand, there might be 5 employees on site. I think it's up to Public Storage to, it's their business. So if there is not enough parking, their customers cannot get to their storage units.
Right,
Yeah.
and definitely, as part of that parking study, it's an inclusive look at all the storage units. And one thing that the applicant kind of can discuss a bit more is the re-tenanting of the space, because really that's the time where there would be any significant parking demand, but for the most part, it's a pretty low threshold. I mean, think of a storage unit, you can leave it there and never come back sometimes until it's over with, but yeah.
So I'm wondering, so 4-story, how far is it from here to maybe the wall there? That's how many feet?
80?
Like 50,
80 feet?
50, 60, somewhere around there?
50, 60? So 150 feet is 3 times
Yeah, it's probably.
this much?
Yeah.
So 3 times, and then 4 stories tall. Compared with, I think right now it's 50 feet. The current setback is 50 feet, right? So we are looking at like 1 story right there, and 3 times back and 4 times tall.
Something like that. It's about a 25-foot setback
Yeah.
right now from the front.
I think, of course, it's not as good as a 2-story or 3-story, but that's a pretty generous setback already, and they do have the right to build pretty close.
Correct. And one of the big things that we worked with the applicant, again, going to the building design was one big thing, but there's a lot of landscaping that's going along that frontage. So there's a drainage requirement to have one of the ways to meet their drainage requirement is through a bioretention. So there's a huge landscaping buffer right at the front of the property that's going to be lined with trees. So it's not going to be a straight look into the building. It's really going to be trees and then a
So
building
it would
behind
look really nice.
That's the
from
plan, yes.
Okay. And then, is it possible, just wondering, so the landscaping area would look really nice. Is it possible the 2nd or the 3rd story also have, I don't know, planter boxes so they look nice too up there?
We did kind of throw that around, that solution, essentially a green wall. What ends up happening is the green walls are typically very hard to maintain and they essentially die out, to be perfectly honest. And so that's why we really kind of focus on building that more sturdy landscaping along the perimeter to really make sure that that stuff can work and grow and be healthy to help screen the building.
Okay. So, and then the setback on the south side. The south side is an office building right now. Is that zoned for residential?
Both those properties and the properties in that area have similar zoning, which is planned development with general commercial, industrial, and residential intent. So they pretty much
Okay,
can
so
do
they
like
could develop residential there.
subject to, the authorization process and all that kind of stuff. But in theory, yes.
The current setback I see is 5 feet, and
Got it.
they are adding it to 10 feet. And then currently, the 5 feet, they have a line of trees there. So 10 feet, do they plan to have another row of trees?
yes.
Or so there will be 2 rows of trees on the south side.
Correct. The row of trees that's currently there is on the office building property side.
Oh, okay.
So those we're not going to touch because that's another property you can't.
So they will add one more row of
Correct.
trees.
And that'd be a bit closer to the building.
Okay. So that would look nicer. And But I do wonder, how come they didn't put the storage right next to highway so that it opens to the south? That way, the south side is more open, right?
So there's a couple things that we had to take in consideration. One of the things is we are getting that future trail easement. And so one thing that we looked into is what would a 4-story building look like next to a trail easement? And so we felt that a better design would be to push that closer to the opposite property line. Now, the distance, that width that is there is essentially to meet the fire requirement. So fire needs to have a certain width in order to get in and out without any issue in case of emergency. So that's where we kind of got that setback and that distance.
Oh, so we don't want the 4-story building to flush right next to the
trail. Yeah.
But we will have the fence along the trail.
Yeah, there'll be a wrought iron fence, so a nice looking fence.
Okay. So in terms of safety, have you looked at safety problems in the area?
We did not look at that.
The property owner did notify and also talk to the HOA of the condo owners, right? So how come this particular property owner didn't know about it until recently?
We go through the homeowner association. First, as Eric was mentioning, we send notices, and it goes to the manager of the homeowner association, and they're responsible for notifying the owners. So we're invited at one of their meetings to do a presentation and to provide information about the project. And that's how we did the outreach.
When did you meet with the HOA?
It was January 2018, January 30th, 2018, and then we did a overall community meeting on March 5th, 2018.
Community meeting is held.
We held it at the community center, at the Quinlan Community Center?
Quinlan.
Quinlan, thank you.
But only 4 people attended, so the property owner that's impacted the most right next to the storage didn't know somehow.
You're right. I guess per council member Robert Willie, I think going forward, we need to find other ways. I don't know, apart from going and knocking on every door, how to do it.
Last question, the condo is a 3-story condo? So
Yeah.
each owner owns first, second, third
Correct.
stories? Is that? No? So,
The condo, how many stories?
Yeah, so the condo is 3 stories, but it's not a vertical
No.
unit. So there are some people who are just in the first floor, some just second and so.
okay.
And just for clarification, the 4-story storage in height, floor to floor, is less than residential. So a 4-story storage, this particular, is the same height as a 3-story residential. We don't need the same floor to ceiling height as the other ones. That's why in height, they're the same height.
That's true, yeah.
But it's 3 and 4 stories.
You are 45 feet high, but the setback is 150 feet. So
Correct.
actually you are a pretty low slope.
I mean,
Yeah, okay,
correct.
good, thank you.
Hey, Rod.
Thank you much. So
Right.
So what we're talking about is a 35-foot tall structure,
It's 45.
45-foot
45
tall
foot.
structure.
So it's-
And it looks like we have a view from past the bike trail with the vegetation. How much of this, this eastern face is seen by the condo complex?
I think most of the, I'm going to pull up the slide so we can kind of. I think this would be, yeah, this would probably be better. So the condos are off here, right? So
Right.
they're essentially looking right into this area, which is
Right.
all going to be landscaping.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So the perspective that we have here
is kind of looking this way.
Not the perspective
Right,
that the
it's more
condo owner
looking
sees.
this way.
So the idea is when the vegetation in this area matures, you may see glimpses of the building, but it's going to be fairly,
Yeah, the idea is that
occluded.
it screens the building.
Okay.
Again, you'll probably still be able to see the building behind it. It's not going to, disappear, but it's going to be masked a bit better than it. So this kind of shows a bit better where the trees would be. So the trees are all lined
Right.
up here and here, and so there's a double row of trees that are going to be going through.
and I think as my colleagues have pointed out, you got 150 feet to the building.
Correct.
We haven't talked about the other side yet. We don't have anybody here who's a resident on the other side. They're apartments, correct?
Correct.
Do we get any feedback from them? They were also noticed?
They were also noticed. The applicant reached out a handful of times
Okay.
to get to them, but and Andreas, correct me if I'm wrong, but they didn't respond back.
Okay, how is the view occluded on the west side?
On the west side, there's really, I don't think we have a rendering for that, but that area there is a parking lot. So it's just there's a covered porch, carport type thing in that area.
So is what I'm seeing in the west here, are these trees?
Correct,
Okay. So as they mature, we would also
correct,
get some occlusion.
yeah.
So then, what I notice about the rendering on the south side is we have an orange accent. If we go to the site plan and architectural design, south elevation, can we do that? There it is. We have a tasteful thing. I don't have any big orange blaring at me. My question to you is, did this go through DRC? Is there any comment about the substantial amount of orange on the east face?
So there was actually a lot more substantial orange throughout the project, essentially
Okay.
more of an orange band throughout the top. And so staff, working with the consulting architect, working with the applicant, really toned it down to really as an accent feature, more as a calling,
Yeah,
less than a calling
I
card.
actually think the south elevation is quite tasteful, and I'm wondering if something more like that could be applied on the eastern face, and if not, why not? I mean, I get why you want branding, right? So the side facing north to the freeway makes
Right.
a lot of sense. And maybe the argument is, well, okay, so we've got the trees that are going to substantially over time occlude that orange face from the neighbors next door. So, yeah, I'd be interested in any reflection anyone has on that.
Andreas, do you or Rose want to speak about the orange at the along the building one, the entry? So this
The east
Sure.
face.
this
Yeah, so as Eric was mentioning, we work diligently with the staff and third-party architect that the city hired to develop this architecture together with our architect, Jack, who's here present, and we minimize the orange. I mean, we are, at the end of the day, a retailer, so probably you've seen a lot of our facilities, how important it is for our branding. So we minimize it, and we literally left it on the fourth floor because, as you suggested, it's probably the part that if you see it from the freeway, maybe is the part that you're going to see. You have a lot of eucalyptus trees that are going to be screening that as well.
Eucalyptuses, huh?
I'm sorry?
Eucalyptus?
Eucalyptus, yeah. There's a lot of trees on the Caltrans, so on the other side of the trail, the piece of land that we're donating. So really the view from the freeway, you can barely see the building even at a 4-story. Maybe you'll see the 4th floor. And so we were focusing as much as we tried to eliminate the orange, where we can leave a little bit just to create some presence. And that's why it's there. And usually the tower, in most of our projects, the legs also come down orange. And staff was concerned with the condos and residential, so we eliminated those as well, and we just left it on top.
Okay.
I don't know if that addresses the question.
Yeah, I guess to staff, you're basically saying those trees are going to occlude the view as they mature. And if they're eucalyptuses, they're probably fairly dense.
there's eucalyptus along 280. I think the,
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, I was
mostly
looking, I'm
interested in
sorry.
what looks, how this looks from
The
the
condos,
condo complex to the east.
gosh, can't remember. There's different species types that are being proposed
Okay.
along that frontage. If, and the deal that they're going to get large, but we can definitely, if council directed us to really ensure that the trees
Actually,
planted.
Eric,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's in your presentation, but on my presentation that, because you did
Yeah.
such a good job presenting, has a rendering that shows a little bit of that view.
Oh,
and
I would appreciate seeing that very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be there. If I'm not dead.
So it's towards the end. Oh, they're right there. So you probably need to drive a little bit further, another 20 feet. But Eric, maybe I can point on
Yeah,
this one, but
so-
the trees that we're suggesting that we're planting are right there.
So, yeah, the trees kind of, are these ones up front, and then they kind of sprinkle through. And there are some along that southern property line that they share with that office building.
Well, I mean, if this is a rendering from my condo unit, I would welcome seeing less orange. Orange is as people know, is a aggressive color, right? And for my taste, if we were able to tone it down on that east face as we have on the south face, I would like it better. Even if it said public storage, if I had strips of color rather than a blob or a big rectangle, that would be my preference. Did this go through the DRC?
It did not go through the DRC. It
Is
went
it
through.
just because it didn't have to, or?
It didn't have to, correct.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
for what it's worth, that's
Yeah, we-
what I might suggest, but
Okay.
I mean, the homeowner seemed frustrated by the height rather than, he didn't mention the color, and I'll just leave it there. That's my feedback.
The trees there, how tall do we expect that to grow and how long it will take to grow into that height? In the east, in this side, the east side.
Good morning. What we are showing in the rendering is approximately a 3-year growth. I don't have exact document on the final height of the trees. Let me see. I may have it on my.
But this tree eventually, I mean, it's really that high, right? Like
Yes.
2, 3.
20, 25, 30 feet.
That tree, I believe, is supposed to be an African sumac. which,
Correct.
Can grow about 30 feet and have a width of about 35 feet.
But on the other hand, you don't want that to be too high either because that would block the sky for the homeowners.
Oh,
right?
the sun would come this way. It wouldn't affect them. Oh, I guess sunset
I mean-
potentially.
Yeah, I mean, the 150 feet setback is good because it wouldn't block the blue sky, but if you have tree that's tall and too close, that also block. So, but the ones closer to the building, if it were higher, that could block the building better.
Well, the Italian cypress do get tall as well, and that's what we have shown along the south. So we have the African sumac, as you can see in the previous rendering, at the corner and along the parking and the bio basin.
The thing with the trees too, they're not all lined up like a wall. They're kind of, there's a row with some in there, so there's,
Clusters.
yeah, there's clusters of them, so it's not a solid wall, so it kind of breaks it up. So it won't be a huge shadow on one side, it'll be small shadow here, small shadow there, separated.
It will have a layering effect
There you go.
as you drive up to it, so. And it has a canopy, light goes through it. It's not a very, dense, so
Okay.
we feel that it will give that transition look, and it will help
Yeah.
block the building.
So, yeah, I'd like to ask, could you come up? So, I think the building is 4 stories, however, you do get 150 feet setback.
Right.
And plus your drive, plus the alleyway, right? So it's kind of already, that's pretty good. So, but then I think if you can provide some input about landscaping, that would make you happier. Maybe they might be willing to accommodate.
I would love to engage with the team a little bit more. So right now, my view is of the mountains, right? And one of the other screenshots actually briefly caught rendering of that. But I will definitely not see a mountain when that's built. I will, and to your point, if I see the sky, I guess I should be happy.
But you do see a very ugly old building right now.
But I can see the mountains to forget the building.
At what level is your condo?
Third floor.
So you are on the 3rd floor?
Correct.
So you're pretty high.
Well,
So-
as I said, yes.
Sir, I think
Yeah. So
you are lucky because we don't get considerate developers often. So I think they have been very considerate in the design. And
Yeah,
now we can
and I
work on
appreciate-
landscaping to maybe.
yeah. I'm not an architect, nor am I a landscape designer. I usually tend not to water my trees and I kill them. So I don't know much about trees. If I can work or chat with whoever and potentially there's something that could be modified, I'd love to take the opportunity. I guess if the decision is that's going to be built and if I can pick the type of tree, then that's what I'd do, but I would prefer the mountain.
Okay.
Maybe I could just ask, Andre, are you interested in a couple meetings with him to maybe improve the landscaping?
Yeah, to tell the truth, I don't have a problem whatsoever to sit down. I think their city has certain, landscape palettes that can be used. They need to be drought tolerant and they meet certain standards. And within those, happy to, have a video conference if that works for you with our landscape architect and just try to figure out something. Because I think maybe even educating you on what landscape we've selected may meet what your desires are. And if not, we can give you options of what works, what doesn't work. I have no problem.
I'd sure appreciate it if you would, meet with the resident,
No problem. I'll whatever means, video conference with our landscape.
It's not just me. One of my neighbors actually came earlier today, but he has kids too, and he had to go. And so
Yeah.
there are other people who are just as interested as I am, but they couldn't stick around.
At the end of the day, I believe the bioretention with the landscape, in my point of view, is an amenity more to the residential than anything else. So we'll be happy to, however format we decide with the landscape architect, to have a sit down and a video conference and whoever you want to invite, and we'll do a working session and figure out what we can come up with.
I'd like to try and move it toward more of a person-to-person meeting as opposed to a video conference. Does the HOA actually have a meeting room there, or?
The HOA conducts their meetings at the gym, but there's a gym in
You'll have to go up
The
to the
microphone,
microphone.
please. Then we need to finish
The
up.
HOA has its meetings in the gym, so there's a little area.
So if you guys were to meet in the gym, I mean, I think for the size of the project and everything, it's a small request to work with them and see. And if nothing else, you're getting to know your neighbors and that they're going to be living there. If they see somebody abusing your facilities or, you know, breaking in or something, you're going to get that advantage. I mean, being neighbors is, you know, can be a big advantage to both of you. So.
And I would love it if you could also think about the safety bit and also the traffic, because that is an alleyway, literally.
So for the safety, what if a video camera is installed, either in public storage side or from your, so that there is coverage? Would that help?
We have video cameras on our facilities, both outside and inside. If anything, this will be a significantly upgrade to the existing facility as it relates to security. So, and we have cameras, you know, in our property at the gate, at each entrance to the lobby of each elevator, and at the office. So we're, of the utmost importance for us is to keep secure facilities. So we, as far as I know from asking my property manager, we haven't had any break-ins into this facility, so it's very safe. So, and most of our customers today and in the future, utilizing our units parked inside our facility, they have to go through the gate with a code. They don't park outside. So, and when they bring their goods with boxes in their trucks, they're going to park in front of the lobby, which is, you know, probably 300-400 feet within the property line.
What is the speed of the alleyway that's allowed? And
Don't know that.
so the one request might be that if there isn't good signage posting the speed limit to alert people that, I mean, we're increasing the amount of traffic on that street for which there are residents and children, you know, making sure that there's good signage there, that it's a 15-mile-an-hour zone or something, making that a part. You know, if the city puts the sign in, that's fine. Right. You know, but really being proactive if we're increasing the traffic on that little stretch.
Right. We can definitely look into it. It is it's a shared access easement between all those properties that front that. So I'm not sure if there's any limitations as to who can put a sign or what the process is, but we can definitely look into that and see what kind of signage we can add to the project.
I think residents will be real happy
sure.
to hear that, you know, the city's trying to do what it can for
Right.
them.
So for the condo owner, if potentially the public storage fund video camera in front of your unit, would that be helpful?
So the question is, will that actually help catch criminals if that were to cause an increase? And ideally, we want prevention as opposed to be robbed and then have the crook caught, right? So again, I'm not a public safety expert to comment and say, yep, one strategically placed camera over there will solve the problem. But maybe there are other experts that the city is aware of who can probably make a more informed statement on this point. But as I said, I just showed you the amount of crime. It's concentrated, at least in that little stretch. If you zoom out, of course, there are things that happen in other places. And I only highlighted property crimes in the last 3 months, I believe. So it is a real concern, and it's definitely close to home for me. So I'm not sure where this camera should be placed or if camera is even the solution. But I'm just raising a concern.
Can I make a recommendation that we be clear about when we're closing the public hearing and then having the applicant have an opportunity to respond and then not reopen the public hearing again, just so we're clear what has been on the record and what the applicant has had a chance to respond to?
Right, fair enough. Okay. All right. So my feeling is this doesn't require any rezoning. The public storage facility was there long before the condos, so I don't really see any reason to deny this. The applicant seems to be willing to work with the residents. It's not going to be perfect because the taller building does obstruct the view, but I just don't see any legal grounds for not approving this.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with that. From the prior comments, I think that, you know, the color, but the fact is this is a particular company and branding. I mean, we do have under the second draft resolution language regarding harmonizing color, among other things, with adjacent developments. So, I mean, if there could be some combination of black or gray and slate, I mean, something that would be a little bit more muted, but, I mean, especially on the, not anywhere else, but the east-facing side. But otherwise, I would be in agreement with general approvals here.
Okay. So, anybody want to make the motions here? Can we make them all together, or do you have to do them individually?
I'd be happy to.
Okay, go.
So I would move that this constitutes conduction of the public hearing, that we find the project exempt from CEQA, and that we adopt resolution number 19-071, approving development permit number DP-2018-3, and that we adopt resolution number 19-072, approving the architectural and site approval.
This is this is the one where if you wanted to make any recommendations regarding color, that would be.
Right. So I will have a comment about this. ASA 2018-4, with some further work, I think it would make sense to have staff involved, to see what we could do to improve the site of this, either by neutralizing some of the color on the east face and/or really looking carefully at the vegetation that might improve what residents to the east see. So perhaps I can leave it that way, unless somebody has a better idea, staff. All right. And then adopt resolution number 19-073, approving the fence exception, EXC 2018-01, and adopting resolution number 19-074, approving the tree removal permit, TR 2019-11.
I'll second.
One quick comment going on Vice Mayor Chow's discussion about the noise and the air filtration. Do you want to give staff direction to just ensure consistency, just kind of drive it home with a condition? We have some draft language that we can share if you'd like for the development permit.
Yeah, I'm happy to add that.
Okay, so we could read it if you like, so you know.
Just a question, so the easement is already included in the
Yes.
development permit?
Correct.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is
Specifically the manager's unit.
the manager's unit, making sure that we're taking appropriate steps to ensure the air quality and the noise.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. That's really what the condition would be.
Do you have any specific language, or do we simply
I
give
just have some
you
draft
that?
language, but we can, with that direction, we're good.
Very good.
Hey, second.
Okay, vote.
Are you okay?
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we are on to item 25, adopt the 2019 legislative platform, staff report.
Oh, we're not holding this.
No, because we have the legislative analyst here.
Oh, he's.
I'm sorry.
She waited this long.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. Katie Nomura, Assistant to the City Manager, here to present the legislative platform. So the legislative platform comes to the council annually for approval. It guides and informs official city positions on legislation, and it is also used by the Legislative Review Committee to take official city positions and send official position letters. During the May LRC, the Legislative Review Committee meeting, we considered the draft platform and received feedback. We brought it back on May 24th, and they recommended it for approval with their modifications that you see before you today. I do have with me Alex Gibbs from Townsend Public Affairs, our legislative advocacy firm. And so if you have any questions, it is very similar to our 2018 platform. It has similar themes. It's consistent with the League of California Cities Association themes. One of the things that was added by the LRC was education, was not a piece of our legislative platform in the past. However, it was seen that even though it is not in our purview, education is important to this community.
I would point out we had very good attendance by residents at these meetings as well. Very impressive number of people turned out.
Like how many? How many people?
How many do
I'd
you
say
think?
about
Like,
5 each time. We got a
Right.
good crowd that comes out.
okay,
Can we,
so we can proceed with the consultant if they're,
does he want to say anything, or?
do you want to say it? You want to comment on anything?
Hi, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Alex Gibbs here on behalf of Townsend Public Affairs. I'd like to just thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening and say that we're happy to be working with the city
This
of
morning.
Cupertino. Oh, my apologies, this morning. And we're happy to be here working with the city of Cupertino. I will echo staff's comments that the legislative committee did a very thorough job in reviewing not only the 2018 platform, but looking further ahead into 2019 and into 2020. I thank not only the mayor and council members, but staff as well for their dedication and hard work on this. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have about the platform. Thank you.
Before we go to platform, can you, I think, for the council members who are not on the legislative committee, could you talk about what service that your firm is providing the city?
Certainly. We are providing legislative advocacy services for the city, and that includes helping to develop the legislative platform and helping to weigh in on these issues as items come up in Sacramento, as you've been discussing earlier this evening, and realize that they do come in frequent and fast. We will be working with your staff and the legislative committee to take positions on these bills, work very closely with your direct elected officials, as well as the authors of some of these potential bills, not only expressing the city's view, but working closely with them to try to reach an outcome that works not only for the city, but for them as well.
And you mentioned that you can also arrange trips for the council to visit legislators and or any council member who visits Sacramento. We might even use your office.
Certainly, that is something that Townsend Public Affairs offers, and I would certainly extend that invitation to not only council members, but members of your staff as well. Should you be in Sacramento, we're more than happy, of course, to arrange any meetings and draft talking points for you with legislators. But of course, in the regular course of your duties as council or staff, should you be in Sacramento for workshops or conferences, anything of that nature, please, I invite you to reach out to us. You're more than welcome to use our offices as a home base. We really like to consider ourselves an extension of your city staff, so please don't hesitate. We look forward to seeing you in Sacramento.
Townsend has been very responsive. For example, right after appropriation committee meeting, we want to know what bills passed or what are the status. They would provide us update.
Okay, I have one card, Jennifer.
Good evening, City Council. I consider this one of the most important things the city has done this week. It has restored my confidence in our ability as a state to try to deal with the issues that are coming out of Sacramento. And I feel much calmer that we will prevail through this. What has happened in Sacramento has shaken my belief in my state's democracy to the core. And I cannot begin to state how this has caused turmoil in my city. And I don't think that people are beginning to even understand the depths of what is happening to the west coast of California. And I mean, I'm coming out of a family that basically built Virginia back to 1625. I mean, I'm not saying that for any point, but I cannot begin to reiterate how this has shook the foundations of everything I believe in. And I am very, very glad that I have a firm basis on how and the way this country was built, and I know the history of California very, very well, and this is not anything that I am proud of that's happening, and I think that in years to come, we're going to have people that are studying this period to find out what exactly happened. And I feel now for the first time that we have a firm grip on what is actually happening to the west coast of California. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Bring it back to council for comments.
I move that we adopt the city's proposed 2019 legislative platform.
Second.
I have a question or two.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. So, reading over the education section, I think it's a great addition. I appreciate the work of the Ledge Committee and how we phrased this here. Could you just educate briefly on the Leroy F. Green Schools Facilities Act? Was this legislation from the early 2000s that basically said that councils weren't allowed to consider school considerations on development and required a certain fee that really doesn't begin to cover costs, or what is that?
So that was a provision that was requested and added by members of the Legislative Review Committee. Unfortunately, I can't speak with specificity to the Leroy F. Green School Facilities Act. That was one that we had reviewed and included at the behest of council.
I can speak to it.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that sets the amount that you can set the mitigation fees at for schools.
Okay.
And there's 3 levels. In order to charge the highest level, which still doesn't cover the cost of construction, you would have to have no unused schools available. There would have to be no money from the state available for school construction. There's like one instance I could find of that happening. It was in Fremont. The developers fought it, but the city prevailed. Our schools would not be able to do it because we have excess school buildings that are leased out to other schools. So basically, that it needs to be amended to provide for the current level of construction costs and land costs.
Yeah, I see. Existing law, the Leroy F. Green School Facilities Act of 1998 establishes a program in which the state allocation board is required to provide state per pupil funding, including hardship funding. Okay. Well, I appreciate this addition. I think it's a good one. And I'm supportive.
I'd like to thank Townsend that you guys provide a really great, and also Katie, you have done such a good job preparing the material for the committee. And one thing I'd like to bring up is, I think I asked you in the first meeting, what if you represent 2 cities with opposing point of view? How would you advocate to the legislators?
Certainly. So that is something that obviously we represent municipalities across the state of California, and they take a wide breadth of issues. Obviously, we feel that communication is key, communicating those not only positions but rationale and logic behind that early and often. However, in the event that 2 positions cannot be reconciled, our firm does defer to whoever was there first, essentially, which client we had initially. However, we do provide out-of-pocket costs for the city affected to hire another representative on that specific issue of the city's choosing. We're happy to pay and facilitate that to your resolution.
But your firm represent only one position, right?
Of course.
Yeah, it's good to know.
Okay, please vote. Okay, finally, item 26.
Carries unanimously.
Oh, sorry. Did you announce the vote?
I did.
Okay. 26, municipal code amendment to consider changing the composition of the Housing Commission to eliminate the requirement that one member be a representative from a Cupertino financial institution. So can we have a staff report?
Good morning.
Morning.
So before you, we have a consideration of a change to the composition of the Housing Commission. We currently have space for 5 housing commissioners, and we are at 4 housing commissioners. We had one of our financial representative commissioner retired from her position, so she was no longer eligible. And council requested that we bring before you a consideration of removing the financial institution requirement for the Housing Commission and turning that position into just a resident of Cupertino. So I'm available for any questions.
Okay, any questions? John? Darcy?
I have no questions.
Rod?
Nope.
Leon?
No blue cards?
Great. No cards, right? Great.
I'd like to move that we find the proposed actions are exempt from CEQA. And could the, well, actually, before I make the motion, could the city clerk please conduct the first reading of the ordinance 19-2185?
This is the first reading of ordinance number 19-2185, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cupertino, amending Title II, Administration and Personnel of the Cupertino Municipal Code, Chapter 2.86, Housing Commission, to eliminate the requirement that one member be a representative from a Cupertino financial institution.
Okay, great. So I move that first, we find that the proposed actions are exempt from CEQA. Second, that ordinance number 19-2185 be read by title only, and that the city clerk's reading constitute the first reading thereof. And finally, that we appoint the first alternate to the Housing Commission after the ordinance goes into effect.
Second.
Third.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. According to the agenda, it's 11:30 p.m.
Way to pull it in.
So, next is council and staff comments and future agenda items. So I will be calling a special meeting Friday at 5:30 p.m. And the reason for this is SB 50, which we thought had been delayed or postponed till January. Well, now there's SB 592, which is a bill licensing barbers and cosmetologists. So why should this concern us? Because of something called gut and amend. So what's happened is they've taken out everything in this bill related to barbers and cosmetologists and put in all the things that were in SB 50. So this is something Scott Wiener did to bring back SB 50, which the legislature put on hold, which housing activists and environmentalists call the 2019 Displacement Gentrification, Environmental Destruction, and More Children Living in Cars Act. Like most cities in California, we already took a position against SB 50, but now we need to meet and have an official position on SB 592, and time is of the essence. we cannot wait until mid-July to take a position. So that's why we will have the meeting Friday at 5:30.
But I did hear the content is not exactly the same as SB 50.
No, not exact, right.
So we do need to study it.
Right.
Yeah. And SB 50 is still alive.
Right. And hopefully our contact in Sacramento will be able to help us with this.
And if I could just
Yes.
offer another option. So we have been in talk with Townsend, and they believe that if we take SB 592 at our Legislative Review Committee, now that we have an approved platform, the Leg Committee can take a position on that bill on next Tuesday at our scheduled meeting, and then that would be in enough time for the July 3rd and July 10th committee hearings.
That's true. We could do it that way as well. But we are having a meeting anyway, right? When is our special?
You do have a closed session, but you may want to check with the city attorney and city manager regarding another item that's on that agenda.
We have 2 closed sessions scheduled. Those could be pushed back till after you could have an open meeting first and then have.
Right.
then have
I'm
closed-
willing to let the legislative committee, of which I'm a part, do this as long as it's okay with everyone else on the council. Okay, great.
So we have
What?
2 closed sessions on Friday.
Correct.
No open session item.
There has been talk about the citywide objective standards, getting direction from council on those before they go to the planning commission. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to talk to the mayor yet about calling that special meeting. We could do that tomorrow to talk about it. We don't necessarily need to talk about it now.
I thought that would be on Friday's agenda, so that's not. We're not doing that?
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah,
about
we
it.
can
don't have
talk,
to discuss that.
we just
Okay.
need to call it by, we would just need to post the agenda by 5:30 tomorrow, so.
Right.
Tomorrow, okay.
Will you be here tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay.
So one thing I'd like to propose for future agenda is, I think sometimes we have a lot of document to study, and the agenda is posted on Wednesday that we have only one weekend, not a lot of time. I think back in 2015, Palo Alto adopted something, so they post their agenda like 11 days ahead or 12 days before. So that will give us 2 weekends to study. So I don't know how hard it is for the staff to prepare. However, I would like to request at least for big project like the budget item, like the big development project or controversial projects. That's or a project that's going on for several months anyway. And can we possibly post those 11 days earlier? That give people time to study.
Right. Could we
So
do a
we don't-
preliminary agenda
Yeah, so we don't cram
and then
everything.
new
the
items on a
last few
final
days.
agenda? Because we obviously can't do the whole agenda that far ahead, but
Yeah.
we could at least do a preliminary agenda that gave the public a heads up on what we're going to be
And we
doing.
reserve
Big
the right
items.
to change, of course.
Have we been including that in the items of interest already, I believe?
Yes, we have had the look ahead on future agendas and items of interest.
And that's public, right?
That's posted
Right.
on our website.
Right, so it's kind of already there.
No, what I mean is not just what's on the agenda. What I mean is attachment for a big item. I think Jim mentioned that the budget has so many items. And then a lot of times, I think I requested that for items like Valco before. A big project with huge number of items to study. It's better this kind of item is posted 11 days earlier, and the other items can be, the content of the other items can be posted later. And of course, the staff can revise the documents later. But that give us time to study.
Okay, anybody else?
Is
Future
that-
agenda items?
Do you feel that's okay? Mm.
It's fine to try. I mean,
I agree.
you'll need to probably give a little more clarification as to what kind of items meet that threshold.
Right, exactly. Rod?
I don't have any future items, and I'm, you know, it's a question of how responsive we want to be, right? If we're asking staff to put things in the can 11 days before, it means that things that we all might like to get done are just going to take longer.
Yeah.
So that's the concern, of course.
That doesn't mean you cannot
Well, I
add
believe this was
item, I
just to
think,
place the
after.
item on the agenda to
Right.
discuss it later, right? So
Yeah,
we're not
we need
having
an
the
agenda
discussion
item to
now.
discuss the agenda. Okay, anything else?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
48 hours.